Hi, fourth grade. We've done a lot of reading and video watching to learn all we can about the French and Indian War. It was an important war because it's going to lead to the American Revolution, which is what you'll start learning in fifth grade. But we want to finish up our learning today of the French and Indian War. I gave you a couple of videos to watch the last couple of days. So you now know that the British had won the war. It was about a 7-year war here in the United States, still going on in Europe also. We know that the French were defeated, and therefore the English got claim of the land that they wanted in North America. So let's finish reading what our PA book says about the French and Indian War so that we can wrap up and you can work on your timelines and make sure you have all the information you need for your timelines. All right, we left off here in this paragraph, okay? It's 3 years after the battle with General Braddock dying in the middle of that battle and having to be buried somewhere along a road. So 3 years later, English General Forbes was sent with 8,000 soldiers to capture Fort Duquesne. Boy, they really wanted that fort, didn't they? How many battles have we seen already to try and get Fort Duquesne off the French? They took a different route. This meant that the road builders were busy again. Finally, the English arrived at Fort Duquesne. However, they found that the French had set fire to the fort and fled the area. The English built a stronger fort called Fort Pitt. Guess what city it is located? Guess what city is located there now? Obviously, we know that is our city of Pittsburgh. So, as I told you before, what was interesting about this is the French saw the 8,000 soldiers coming this time, and the French knew they didn't have a chance against 8,000 British soldiers. So instead of leaving the fort for the English to have, they burned their fort down. They burned it to the ground. Why give it to the English? Why give them a perfectly formed, well-built fort? Make them build their own. Kind of smart thinking for the French. So before they were able to escape, they made sure to light that fort on fire. Didn't matter. When the English were able to claim that land, which is now the point in Pittsburgh, they built a new fort, a stronger fort called Fort Pitt. And again, that's right in Pittsburgh. And there is a Fort Pitt Museum that you can visit right at the point in Pittsburgh. You can also go to the website for the Fort Pitt Museum and learn a lot of interesting facts about that. You could probably even find information for your timelines by looking at the Fort Pitt Museum site. You know, it's part of the Heinz History Center that we went to in March for our field trips. And so they have a museum there at the point. So when this whole quarantine is over and you're able to get out and do some things, a trip down to Pittsburgh this summer with your family, going to the Fort Pitt Museum to learn more about it might be a really interesting walk around the park. And you can see where the Fort Duquesne was and Fort Pitt. And there's a nice little museum there. All right, so the result of the French and Indian War was that the English went on to defeat the French forces in Canada. It took more than 2 years. By 1760, the French were driven out of North America. However, many French colonists remained in Canada. The English controlled the fur trade. Pennsylvania remained an English colony, and that's important because if the French would have won, we would have been a French colony. But since the English won, we are still an English colony. Now, the war may be officially over. However, Native Americans weren't happy. Okay? You just saw that in that last video that you watched yesterday. The Native Americans were not at all happy with everything that had happened. So the fight goes on with the Native Americans. The French and Indian War was over. However, many Native American tribes were unhappy with English rule. As a result, in 1763, they attacked frontier forts in western Pennsylvania. A tribal chief by the name of Pontiac, sound familiar, led the attacks. Only 3 forts held out: Fort Bedford, Fort Ligonier, and Fort Pitt. Now, I'm not sure how many forts were there, but only 3 forts were able to withstand the battle. Fort Pitt was one of them in the area of Pittsburgh today. Remember, it had been replaced It took the place of Fort Duquesne, and it was a much stronger fort, so it withstood the Native American attack as well. The English sent Colonel Bouquet and an army from Philadelphia to stop the attacks. About 20 miles east of Fort Pitt, Colonel Bouquet's army was attacked by the Native Americans. The battle lasted all day. Finally, Colonel Bouquet's army was able to win this battle and save Fort Pitt. It is known as the Battle of Bushy Run. In 1764, the war with the Native Americans ended. This is a picture of Chief Pontiac. He led the Native American tribes on their attacks of those American forts. He was quite angry with the English people and the way that they had dealt with them and treated them. So, even though the French and Indian War was over, the Battle of Bushy Run was the last battle recorded in 1764, and that ended the war with the Native Americans. So, we've learned all about the French and Indian War. We've used our Pennsylvania book. We've used some videos. We've used readings and things like that. So you've done a wonderful job with this. You have a timeline to finish. Make sure that you have 10 items, 10 events from the French and Indian War on your timeline. When you are done with that, you can send it to me, and I will grade that for you. So we will be heading into another subject now that we have finished the French and Indian War. Great work, guys. I'll talk to you soon.